Welcome to Shelf Help, a channel dedicated to talking to the void about whatever book I happen to be reading. I am your host, the reader. The following review will contain spoilers. I always appreciate an author who's willing to make their character suffer, and life just keeps kicking this poor kid. It's delightful. Kellen is a Gentep, the people of magic. Well, not yet. He is still an initiate, and he must pass the tests before his 16th birthday if he wants his mage name. But if he fails, he will become a Shetep, the non-magical servant class. The problem is, his magic is fading. So how do you pass tests of magic without magic? Well, you cheat. It goes pretty well, till his sister decides to out him, and then kills him. Don't worry, he gets better. These are the opening chapters. He's saved by a wanderer named Ferris Parfax, who uses the magic of CPR to restart his heart. See, the Gentep are people of magic. Just magic. They do everything with magic. Everything. If you don't have magic, you're not Gentep. Magic is the singular most important status symbol in the Gentep society. The more powerful your magic, the higher your standing. Family, then clan, are close seconds. Neither can be protected without magic. With his trick exposed, Kellen's options are fading. It's not helpful that he's now connected to Ferris, who is an outsider and suspicious by default. And then the clan prince dies, without an heir. Kellen's family is one of the most powerful, and his father is now in the running for the most powerful physician in the clan. But he's not the only one, and some will do anything to ruin his family's chances. Being raised Gentep, one of Kellen's biggest fears is becoming Shetep. The Shetep are the servant class. Though servant is putting it nicely. They live in hovels at the edge of town. They cannot choose their own jobs. They cannot marry. They cannot have children, or even look their Gentep masters in the eye. Keep in mind that this is a closed society. Ferris Parfax is considered suspicious just by being there. The Shetep were born into Gentep families. They are children, aunts, and uncles forced to be servants, usually cast from their homes, and not always because they don't have any magic. Perhaps their magic just isn't strong, or their families lack the proper influence, especially for female children. Kellen's family even keeps his Shetep uncle as a servant. He is, as Kellen's father, his uncle's brother, says, part of the household, but not the family. He does not eat with the family. The children don't call him uncle. He does all the housework. So yeah, the Gentep are pretty awful as a people. They have both a superiority complex and a persecution complex. There's a lot of talk about defending their people from their many enemies, how everyone is jealous of their magic, and because it makes them unbeatable. And also how they're going to be enslaved if they don't grow stronger. Right. But for all the talk of their many enemies, none are present in this story. Maybe they'll show up later, but coupled with how they treat their own people who lack sufficient magic, I'm wondering if they all just drank the Kool-Aid. Also, that's a lot of whining about being enslaved from people who are enslaving their own children and siblings as a matter of course. That said, a group can be collectively awful and still have members that are good, or at least believe that they are good. Kellen's friends Nafina, Panashi, and his sister Shella are examples to different degrees. Shella loves her brother, even if he doesn't have magic. She believes in him. When he's in trouble, she defends him. She risks herself to try and bring him a power animal to restore his magic. And even as he loses his magic, she insists he will always be her brother. Granted, she does kill him in the first few chapters, but she was trying to help. But she also treats their Shetep uncle with derision. Then there's Nafina, Kellen's crush. She's from a less influential family and less powerful than his sister, and thus often shuffled aside in class. so it leads her to take some unpleasant measures. She does her best to do better after her lapse. Her actions were perfectly in keeping with the law and traditions of the Gentep, but legal and moral are not always the same thing. She's also the one he has the most interaction with outside of his family. There are real feelings there, and real regret for the harm she causes. But the worst offender is Panache. This is definitely a show, don't tell situation. We're told that they've been best friends since childhood, that Panache put off his own mage trials a year to graduate with Colin. As Colin is considering his options to regain his magic, Panache is one of the first people he thinks will help. And yet, we see almost nothing from him. He tries to talk Colin out of the duel trial, and then the next time we see him, he's siding with the bullies. First as a face in the crowd of an impromptu illegal trial, and then as an active collaborator. But because we never see the friendship before the duel, the betrayal feels empty. It doesn't not do any good to say, we can never go back to how we were, if the readers never saw that. However, Panache does not believe he's wrong here. From his point of view, he's the hero, defending his people from a suspicious outsider and her soon-to-be Shitep defender, who was his best friend. And the outsider saved said friend's life. No attempt is ever made to talk to said friend. Not that Colin reaches out either, but still. I can absolutely see that if this story was written from Panache's point of view, that Colin makes a perfect villain. All characters should be written as the hero of their own story, even if they're the villain in someone else's. These three are different sides to the same ideology. Panache follows the letter of the law and the lore of the clan. Shella is willing to bend the rules, but only for her brother. Nefina accepts the laws, but sees the immorality and regrets her actions. I notice that the characters who are at risk of becoming Chitep are the ones who see their world's blatant unfairness. It's very much a veil of ignorance situation. In case you haven't heard of it, the veil of ignorance is a thought experiment to judge the morality of an action. You postulate a situation and then decide if it's moral or immoral without knowing where your place in that scenario would be, assuming all possibilities are equally likely. For example, slavery. Without knowing if you'd be the master or the slave, would you deem slavery moral? I assume the vast majority of people would deem it immoral because most people don't want to be slaves. Granted, that is a very cut and dry example. Whereas something like, should a starving person steal food from a failing restaurant, gets a lot messier. Which brings us to Ferris Parfax. She claims to be Argosy, a people who are known mostly for gambling, playing cards, and doing work for money. The Gentep don't like the Argosy, but at least they don't consider them enemies. To be fair, the feeling's mutual. When Colin is called to see the Dowerage Magus, he learns a bit more. Their cards are more than just for games. They're for predicting the future in a limited way. The cards are as you would expect. 4 suits, named after the 4 major races, consisting of 10 number cards and 3 face cards each. They also make discordances, wild cards, if you will, representing people who don't fit neatly into their proper suit. And she's taken an interest in Colin. Of course, she isn't saying why. Mysterious wanderer characters never do. She's also the best friend this kid has ever had, bar none. Even if most of her advice boils down to telling him to pull up his big boy panties. And because he's the only person who takes the time to just talk to her like a person, he's the only one who knows she isn't an active threat. Seriously, how do these people survive? They don't make anything. They have to trade for it. So how do they get by while treating everyone like they want to enslave them? On that, what do they trade? Maybe the next book will go into the economics of the world more. I'm going to put this on my second shelf. It's an exciting book about losing faith in the system. There's a lot of good commentary about elitism and the value of a person. But it loses a lot of its emotional impact by dropping us directly into the duel. We don't get to see the world through Killin's eyes before the scales fall away. Before, he only shares a few lines with his friends and none with his family. After, we mostly see interactions with his family and almost none with his friends. This is especially true with Panache. There's a scene where Killin laments their lost friendship and how they will never recover, and all I can think is how they haven't spoken a kind word to each other since the duel. And they didn't lack opportunity. They were just never utilized as they could have been. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's mileage will vary, so feel free to leave your thoughts.